Hi, everybody. My name is Marissa, and today I am joined by a group of lovely astrologers to talk about Jupiter's ingress into Leo. Yeah, this is going to be an informal conversation where we talk about what's coming up, past transits, what we see. Yeah, I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. My name is Marissa. I'm part of the head steering committee for the Astrologers Co-op, where we bring together different voices in astrology. That's one of my favorite things to do is to bring different people together and see how we collaborate. Yeah, who wants to go next? Whoever wants to introduce themselves. Don't all
Hi,
jump at once. Okay?
yeah. I was like, okay, I have Mars and Aries. Let me just take the initiative and just get it started. Hi, I'm Nivedita. I'm an astrologer and tarot reader from India. I have been studying astrology and tarot for like 6 years now, and I've been doing readings and being more professional with it for like the past 3, 4 years. And I just love astrology and tarot because I feel like I'm someone who needs everything to be meaningful, and astrology adds that meaning and like poetic thing to everything that you do. Like everything is written in the stars, so I love that. And yeah, that's why I love astrology. Yeah, that's
Yay,
me.
thank you for being here.
Okay, I'll go next just
Mhm.
because I've been also doing this studying astrology for the same time as Niverita, so that's funny. I've also been studying kind of like seriously for like 6 years, and I opened my readings 2.5 years ago, I feel. I'm from Spain, from Madrid, Spain. I specialize in Hellenistic astrology, Islamic astrology as well. I'm always trying to find more of the Islamic astrology, specifically from Spain, because there's like a rich lineage there, but it's not too easy to find. So that's kind of something. And I also wrote an article about Jupiter in Leo, which you can read in my Substack. It's on the screen, but my Substack is Duna Haller. Just like that, you put Substack Duna Haller or Substack Duna Astrology, you're gonna find it. And my article was about kind of these pagan gods of Spain, of the peninsula, that was kind of a mix of Marduk and Dionysius, and felt very Jupiter and Leo to me. And once we start discussing more about Jupiter and Leo, I can get a little bit more into why or the energies that I see as representing in Jupiter and Leo. But yeah, that would be me.
Awesome, thank you. Who wants to go next?
Hi, I'm Katie McHugh. I'm located in Rockaway Beach, New York. I have also been astrologer I've been studying very seriously for about 6, 7 years. So what's up with the 6 year, 7 year club,
Okay.
right over here,
Yeah.
going strong.
Mhm.
And I consider myself a neoclassical astrologer, like a good Mercury and Gemini. I have studied a plethora of different astrological techniques, ranging from Hellenistic, medieval, Renaissance to the modern era. I am a great integrator in the work that I do. I'm also a cosmobiologist and Uranian astrologer. You can follow me on Instagram at Katie McHugh Astrology. That's where most of my work is. And I have a big webinar coming up on the Barbo Basket that you can join me for at the end of the month, as well as speaking at the United Astrology Conference in Chicago in September. So excited to be here with you all to talk about the really exciting and also dun dun dun, transit of Jupiter and Leo. So great to be here with all you guys.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm gonna be there. It's my first one. I have to come to your talk.
Oh,
Yay.
yay. Oh,
I'm
it's not at a great time. It's at 9 a.m. on Saturday after the big party. So it's like, yeah, we'll see if everyone rolls in at that time. And guess what? It's about astrology and recovery and sobriety. So it's like,
Oh my
doesn't
God, I
work great
love
for the post
that.
party talk. It's hilarious. But
I
yeah, I'd love to see you there.
yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be my birthday that week. It's my solar return, so
Yay. Oh, happy
yeah.
solar
Oh my
return
God.
It's gonna
early.
be fun. Yeah, I'm really excited. Okay, who
Awesome.
wants to go next?
Love to go. Hi, everyone. My name is Katya. I also go by KPF. and I'm excited to be here with you all. I'm also quite similar to all of you, started my astrology consultation business in the midst of the pandemic. I've been studying for 6, 7 years. I'm mainly a traditional Western Hellen, not Hellenistic, mainly medieval and Islamic astrologer at this point. I also specialize in things like horary and astrocartography, and I integrate astrology with other healing modalities to support my clients throughout their journey. I am also going to be speaking at the UAC during their lunch lectures on Saturday, so I would love to see you all there. And
Yay.
I am just about to launch my website again for the thousandth time. I've been finding a lot of really cool projects supporting other astrologers with their blogs and their websites. So if you're interested in that, I'm happy to help you set yours up too.
Amazing. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I think we have two more people.
It's so nice to hear everybody share their story and also to see how we all resonate. So it was about, I would say, 2018, which is about 7 years ago or so. Well, I think 8 now, but that's when I first saw my natal chart. And I was instantly enamored with astrology, and I just wanted to go deeper until it was about end of 2020, beginning of 2021. I decided I can actually become an astrologer. Like people actually do that, and it's something that's really needed, especially during this time of life. And I just continue to see how much more we're needed. I originally went down the modern path, but then I also integrated different elements of Hellenistic, medieval Islamic astrology, and I kind of see how that shows up in how people can be supported through a fuller lens because I believe that combining modern and traditional is really important. I always make sure that I see people where they're at, but I support them through whatever they're experiencing, whether they're trying to scale and experience a level of abundance, or they're navigating through crisis, or need someone to support them through what's actually happening. A lot of what I do with astrology is a combination of supporting people in person and virtual. So I kind of like to combine and support people through both aspects.
Yes, thank you. And share your name. You forgot to name.
Oh, Benedicta.
Benedicta. Hi,
um,
Benedicta. Well, we knew who you were, but the audience. And then we have Ambrosia.
hmm I've been practicing slash studying properly astrology since 2021. I think I got into it like a lot of people do, where like as a kid, I saw like one page of horoscopes one time and I figured out what I was. I'm a Gemini. I also have a Gemini Mercury. And the rest is history. But like I studied it for real during quarantine. Or I like to think of it as when the North Node was in Gemini. It was a very fun time for learning.
Mhm.
So how do I sum up what I do? I have a very strong humanities background in education, especially in Hellenistic, like history of ancient Greece and Renaissance Italy. And then I studied astrology after the fact. And I give tarot and astrology readings every month at the first Thursday art walk we have here. So it's usually tarot that I actually am practicing with people now, but I get to do readings once a month with however many people come to me in the first few hours. And similarly, I try to give them a practical answer to whatever they're trying to figure out that will leave them feeling some sense of solace or like they got some answers rather than having more questions. I studied Hellenistic astrology, but I've also studied a little bit of medieval, a little bit of modern, honestly, whatever the thing I'm interested in calls for. So first I just studied Hellenistic to like get the basics, and I took a fertility astrology course for many months that also led me into more medieval things. And then when I first learned astrology, I was reading like Liz Green and things that were modern. So I guess like, I don't know, worked backwards. And now I'm here.
Yeah, awesome. That tends to be the gateway, right? We have to start with that. Um, well, I think we'll just dive right into it since we only have an hour. Thank you once again, everyone, for being here. I'm so excited to hear everyone's unique perspectives. So let's just kind of start with what's coming and kind of what we are getting a feel for here. You know, Jupiter, this is a once in a 12-year transit happening. So the last time Jupiter was in Leo was 2014 to 2015. Before that, we had the 2002 era. So what is everyone kind of anticipating? What are you excited about? What do you see potentially happening during this transit?
So the biggest thing that I kind of noticed, I have my notes here, was that when Jupiter was in Leo back in 2014, 15, we had the North Node in Libra and South Node in Aries.
Mhm.
So, Jupiter was like sextiling the North Node and trining the South Node. But now, because we'll have the nodes in the Leo Aquarius axis, so it's like
Mhm.
Jupiter's going to conjoin the South Node and oppose the North Node. And so in 2014 and 15, there was like a lot of trends about like making your body look bigger. Because at the time, like there was this, that's when the Anaconda music video came out with Nicki Minaj, right?
Mhm.
Right, and that's when for a part of Jupiter and Leo, Saturn was in Sagittarius, which is associated with like the thighs and the ass and stuff.
Mm.
Um, and that was also when, if anybody remembers, Kylie Jenner did this challenge where you put your lips in a shot glass and you make them look bigger. And
Yes.
I think that's very interesting because that was also the time where that Oscar selfie that Ellen DeGeneres and all these people took, that became famous. So it's like a lot of people were really resonating with celebrities. They were
Mhm.
like trying to be like them, like fashion trends were like, you have to follow them. That's also when Snapchat was a big thing, like it became bigger. But I feel like, yeah, and there was this a lot of conversation around beauty, but like following beauty, not going against it. Uh, and the trends that Hollywood was setting. But now I think because the South Node is also co-present with it, I also tweeted about it. I think there's going to be a lot of conversation around like uh, becoming smaller for the sake of beauty and like, things like disordered eating habits that are kind of glorified by celebrities and things like that because Chiron will be in Taurus. So, like those themes of nourishment and how kind of beauty asks you to not nourish yourself. Those kind of talks are going to be there, and it's already started. With conversation around Ariana Grande and like her body and what she might be going through. So I think it's like going to be completely different, where people are actually going to move away from not just celebrity culture, but what like trends are asking them to do, like actively rebelling, but more so just understanding that okay, something is wrong here. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's a great point, especially with the South Node, the contraction there, and then having Pluto and the North Node in Aquarius. It's, people are getting tired of celebrity. It's a very different environment than it was 12 years ago. That's a really good point. Anybody else?
That was a really good point because there's definitely going to be some shifts in the culture. There's going to be shifts in certain trends. When Jupiter first goes into Leo, it's going to be making a lot of different aspects. It's going to sextile Neptune and Aries, it's going to sextile Uranus and Gemini, and it's going to oppose Pluto in Aquarius. It's almost like an energy of feeling like I need to break out of certain constraints, but I also need to do it in a way that's real to who I am. There's going to be a lot of room for creativity, but there is also going to be a need for people to kind of have their own voice, especially with the fact that with trends, there's this tendency of, okay, everybody's doing the same thing. And that's going to slowly stop working as, the transits that's going to be happening in July, Jupiter in Leo and South Node in Leo continue over the next year or so. There's going to be this urge for people to want to tap into creativity, experience fun again, but not fun because an influencer said that this is what you need to do, not fun because there is a celebrity ad that people are gravitating towards and it seems like that's going to be the next thing that's going to get you noticed or that's going to be something that you can do with your friends. It almost feels like there's going to be new ways of gathering, people connecting with each other. There's also going to be a bit of a cinematic renaissance, I feel, where there's going to be more original content, more original movies. And there's also this really interesting trend with things when it comes to Hollywood becoming more accessible to other people, like the micro dramas or like the vertical dramas that were really big on TikTok, and the fact that Netflix and other places are going to start adopting them. So I definitely do see that there is going to be this new creative surge where more people are going to be wanting to try different things, wanting to experience new ways of doing what they've always been doing, but also doing it at the beat of their own drum and seeing how that resonates with them and how that can show up within their communities.
I like that.
I love that. I really love that. I do think that bringing in the outer planets and the, Barbeau basket configuration and how I like to think of it, it's like a vessel that we're kind of dealing with, and it's going to change depending on who and what is pinging off those outer planets. Because right now, those outer planets are getting pinged off by Venus as we speak. We have Venus at that handle of that basket and bowl. And we see these cultural trends changing, but that's also the change in the zeitgeist of Neptune into Aries, where we're sick of the celebrity culture. We have a lot more entrepreneurship coming into play. We have the birth of AI and other things that are there, that we have to see and grapple with and talk about. And when Jupiter goes into Leo, Leo is ruled by the sun, the king of the sky. It's the only ruler of the sun. And I always say, who's got the crown on, right? Who is full of sovereignty? When we think about things within the context of our individual lives, the Jupiter going into Leo is a very different experience, in my personal opinion. It's one in which, I'm sorry, there's a lot of background.
Yes,
Katya, I think your thing is on. Sorry, darling. But when we look at it in our individual lives, it's a lot different than when we look at it in the larger mundane world. In our individual lives, we're all giving birth to something. We're in new times now. All the outer planets have moved into new things. We're going to see changes not only in the way we communicate, talk, interact with one another, but what everybody is going to be into. And it's going to change all of culture. Take longer than we think because, again, it is outer planets. So in our individual lives, we're getting this opportunity to really dump out that sovereignty and that individualistic way in which we radiate out into the world, whatever we're gestating and building. On a larger scale, we're going to be talking about wealth and money. We're going to be talking about that we have the first trillionaire. With the South Node there, we are going to be talking about things wanting to be pulled down into the Pluto of Aquarius, power struggles and control over the wealth that we have and who is the crown. For me, it really begins, July 29th, we have the Cazimi of Jupiter taken right into the heart of the sun. And that's a very fortunate time period. Few days earlier, we have the July 20th configuration where Jupiter hits all the outer planets. And on the 26th, the nodes flip. And every time the nodes flip, what do we have? Economic crashes, we have economic difficulty, but we also have the opportunity in the new world that we're building to be able to have maybe more of a distribution of wealth. Again, if we harness the courage and the audacity that Aries is asking of us, right? And then we've got the reckoning that's going to come, I think, August 12th with that total solar eclipse where the lights are going to go out. And from there, within the retrograde period, when Jupiter's retrograde, so is Mars into the new year. So we've got this real time period with Jupiter going in where we're going to really be thinking about what we value. How much money are we spending? What do we really need to buy that or do we not need to buy that? And not just about money, but about how we really value the things and how we value ourselves and the individual radiant way in which we actually can move out in the world. And we're going to see, people up at the top fall. I also think there'll be more disclosures. Again, there's a lot to get into, right? And I agree about the cinema as well, because in 1895, I believe, Jupiter in Leo was the birth of the cinema. So we will see, I think, a revolution of live theater, because Chiron going into Taurus, people are going to want the real thing. And guess who Jupiter meets first thing when he goes in? He meets Chiron and Taurus. Jupiter squares Chiron.
Interesting. Yeah, you've given us a lot to chew on. Absolutely. Yeah, I have this is going to be my Jupiter return. So I actually have Jupiter and the South Node conjunct in Leo, which is the transit we're about to experience in my first house. And so something about Jupiter in Leo, because it's the sun, is the fact that what does the sun do? It literally exposes. So people are like, "Oh, Jupiter, what is Jupiter?" Jupiter is you facing yourself. Jupiter and Leo, when Jupiter comes back into Leo, it's going to confront you with, "Oh, this is who I am and this is this person and this is, there's a lot of having yourself reflected back to you." So having that natally, I experience that a lot. That's what everyone's going to be kind of getting a taste of when this transit happens in this year. And so I agree with what you're saying here in terms of celebrities being exposed. Like people are going to, it's going to come back to who they really are. Yeah, just being sun rolled really has that impact on people, and people don't really like it. There's a lot of misconceptions about Leo, but obviously, astrologers, you all know this. Like, it's about authenticity and exposing things. So, someone prominently with Leo in their chart, that's what you do. You're shining a light on things. So we're really going to get a light. And with that opposition to Pluto, that is fascinating in terms of the collective. Yeah, I'm very curious. Anybody who wants to talk next?
Can you guys hear me a little bit better now?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, great. I put a mini mic. I'm always ready. Okay, so I also want to call out the fact that there is this mini generation of millennials that have their Jupiter return happening in Leo, but there's a couple of them that also have the South Node in Leo as well. And a few people are also natal South Node Jupiter and Leo people. So I think their return is going to be very magnified because anything that touches either the north or the south node tends to function in extremes. So when we have the south node, switch over into Leo and then Jupiter transit it, we will all collectively experience that kind of shift. But the people that have it natally, I think it will show up with a lot more emphasis at whatever is being represented by the Leo parts of their chart and also by the Pisces and the Sagittarius parts of their chart as well. And so we've heard many more evolutionary astrologers talk about when Leo, or rather, when a planet touches Leo, sometimes they will lose the goodness. And I think this is also coming from like medieval Islamic astrologers as well, because the South Node tends to diminish the good qualities of the benefics like Jupiter. So there might be some kind of falling from range or status or some kind of loss in terms of like finances or reputation for a couple of people, or rather, I think we'll see it in the way that we collectively look at the government or things in power in terms of like our cultural capital. Again, the celebrity culture, and then the way that this is going to be influenced by technology, as Catherine said, I think is going to be a very interesting part of us recording history as it happens, not just looking back at the last couple of decades or centuries, but looking at what we're doing right now to sort of encapsulate the culture that we're making here and how that expands beyond our physical, like the physical social status into the digital social sphere as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like
Yeah,
that.
that was
appreciate-
amazing. Oh, okay. No, go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is it okay if I talk? I can't see
Yeah.
everyone at once. Okay.
Yeah.
I like all the points everyone is making. I'm an Aries rising with Saturn in Aries, so I'm thinking very much about the trine, and it's especially with Neptune there and that correlation with cinema, because Neptune, of course, is also very heavily tied into film and movie magic and like suspending your disbelief for the purpose of coming to a greater truth. I think also in relation to how people are engaging with their bodies. I've been thinking about this a lot because I've always looked very like Grim Reaper skinny, to the point that when I transferred schools, I would often get called into a nurse's office so they could essentially harass me about my eating habits. And I realized like no answer was good enough for them. I would tell them I ate a lot. They could ask my family and they would still look at me with doubt. And I think about that in relation to the first time Saturn ingressed into Aries, not this year, but like the last time when it dipped in previous year. Here in Seattle, there was a Christo-fascist demonstration on Cal Anderson Park in like the gay neighborhood of our city. And there were queer counter protesters because this is their neighborhood and they didn't approve. And the local police, who still resented them for the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone of 2020, mind you, pepper sprayed and arrested all of the queer counter protesters. And I remember thinking that's exactly what Saturn and Aries feels like. You will voice discontent and you will be punished for it. So that combined with Jupiter now with the South Node, or about to be, I just finished reading a new book that discussed South Node in synastry as being something that whoever the South Node person is throwing away or discarding or not seeing the value in whatever planet it's touching. So I think about this trine where like Jupiter with the South Node in Leo, trine the Saturn in Aries. I just feel like is going to be a continuation of both attention drawn to things that people don't want to pay attention to and an abject refusal to engage with it appropriately. Um, you could consider that like anti-intellectualism right now for one thing. I remember this book I was reading was specifically it's Judith Hill's new The Astrologer's Love book. Was talking about if someone you would never want to have a teacher-student relationship with Jupiter in the South Node because the South Node student is just not going to respect or appreciate anything the Jupiter teacher is trying to convey. So I just have to imagine that's going to be a feature, especially related to like propaganda, like film, cinema, all of this image politic. I think it'll be an interesting time to see both what people are trying very hard to present visually as a vibe, as something they want you to embrace and embody, which is obviously going to be very kind of militaristic with the Aries angle. You notice a lot of camouflage has come back into vogue and like wearing leather and fur and things that evoke violence just to be wearing it aesthetically these days. So I guess, yeah, I'm intrigued to see where that's going to go. Not because I don't expect the like typical use of film and image to convey a PowerPoint, but because we have that Pluto in Aquarius and we have the South Node with Jupiter, I don't think it will be received well by the masses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, what you said is really interesting. It made me think about back when Jupiter was in Leo in 2002, and someone had mentioned that's when reality TV really popped off. And the whole purpose of reality TV is that it was messy and everybody was just being themselves, and it was like anti-celebrity, right? And it was still so new that like reality stars weren't celebrities yet. You would just get like 15 minutes and that was it. But reality TV took off in this way that it became mass produced, like movies. And so what we're seeing now, 24 years later, is like heavily produced and edited and scripted reality. It's called reality, but it's no longer. They've fabricated it. And so that just really sparked something when you said that. It was like, yes, like with the old media, with traditional media, they've been trying to sell us a narrative for years. And with the rise of social media, we've been able to see, this isn't matching up. So that is going to be an interesting dichotomy to watch. Like the fact that everything is so overproduced now, they're shoving it down our throats, and we're like finally pushing back, like, this isn't real. Like, where is the reality actually happening here? Back to, Leo and exposing things. That's really interesting to think about.
I forget who described Neptune as being hyper reality too. So I like to think of that too, with the Saturn, Neptune, and the trine, like
Yeah.
something.
I find that
It's really
interesting. Does anyone else have anything to add, particularly about what you think might
I
happen?
just wanted to
Although,
say when
mhm.
I just want to add to that when we think about fabricated reality, we also have to include all of the deep fakes that are now part of the digital sphere. So it's not just the scripted reality TV, it's also, I'm not really sure if that's a real photo or not because AI has gotten so good at making images and even videos. Um, and then also with the really, I guess, the lack of integrity that we've had in some of the press or the very public type of press media, it's like, is that even a real thing that happened? So that has to be included in the pop culture narrative as well now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can't trust anything that I see anymore.
That's
It's
part of that
very
South Node
disheartening.
too, of us
Yeah.
like us as being like, we don't take this seriously. Like we're rejecting this on sight.
Mm, that's
Definitely.
very
And I definitely think it's also Saturn Neptune as well. I mean, if we think about the Jupiter, the Jupiter trine coming up to Saturn, that's the opening trine from the 2021 conjunction that began our actual age of air that we're living inside of. I'm a Saturn Jupiter conjunction baby in Libra, 1981. So that was when we had the birth of the internet. And now we have that opening trine, but it's not just happening with that trine, it's happening with the Saturn Neptune. And on the augmentation, that kind of thing. I also think Jupiter South Node is like every single person's on a diet drug. Like there's going to be consequences to this. You know what I mean? I mean, everybody and their mother's on Ozempic, And I remember Austin Coppock in his webinar on eclipses, which I highly recommend. He reframed the South Node. One of the things that we often in the West, we don't like the South Node because we don't like things that are about aestheticism and letting go and letting things just happen and release. Release is also surrender. It's also humility, And so there's a level where, there's going to be a humbling, you know what I mean, that comes. This could be a good thing for redistribution of wealth. Pluto with the North Node in Aquarius, the sign of community and of the mind and of all these other types of things. And I think it's really important to take money out of the equation because we constantly just think in terms of money. How can I make more money, be productive, be the producer, do this and that, when really we need to be thinking about value. What do we really put on our values? And there might be a level where we suddenly go, I don't freaking value that so much. I don't value, spending more money for Jeff Bezos to get richer, And again, the North Node in Aquarius, well, maybe, and with all these trines and stuff, maybe we can actually come together and make that change happen,
Yes, no, that's amazing. This will be my nodal return, and I'm very excited about it. Because I feel like I'm finally getting my flowers during my nodal return. I've done the work, but I actually did my own personal research on this because I was fascinated with the way that pop culture has shifted. I did this for the Astrologers Co-op conference. And so I found it in 8-year cycles. We went through a period where it was heavily conservative. It was all about wealth and blah, blah, blah. And then we went into a more socialist period in the 90s where everyone was more conscious of their neighbor. And then the 2000s hit, and all of a sudden everyone was conservative again. And, it's the nodal return in a lot of ways, that everyone's obsession with the 2000s, like all of that stuff coming back, And I was like, what is this? By the time that I was in college, it was the Obama era, and we had body positivity, marriage equality happened in 2015. We felt like we were finally making progress. And then when the pendulum swung the other way, I was just personally shocked. I was just like, what is happening? Why is this happening? And so it's really interesting when the North Node is in the personal signs, there is this self-obsession, this obsession with image. We found, all the plastic surgery, like you said, Ozempic, all of this, like everyone's self-obsessed at the same time that they are conservative. Those two things tend to blend together. And then when the North Node enters our farther planets, the outers, we have distance. We have distance to see the collective from another perspective. And through that, the community building comes into play. And so I just needed some hope. And I was like, when the North Node enters Aquarius, whether people like it or not, everyone's going to start thinking about their neighbor. And, for the people that aren't already doing that, they're going to have to out of necessity, because what is happening, like particularly, here in the United States, like with the economy and all of that. And so it's very interesting how all of this is coming into play, and how, it's like history repeats itself, but it's also got these added layers to it depending on where the outers are at that time. So I'm very excited basically to enter in this new 8-year period of the North Node being in the outers. Duna, what do you got to say? Yes.
Yeah, I was listening to all of you talk about the movies and the like reality TV and all those, like the relationships between Jupiter cycles and those aspects. that made me think a lot of the research I did for my article of Jupiter in Leo was around the birth of Hollywood, who was very related to Jupiter in Leo. There's a lot of charts, very important movies, very foundational movies like Citizen Kane or another like very important movies had Jupiter in Leo. And then also the cycles of like how people have related to that culture. Unless you were like Marisa was pointing this out very well of like how there's these cycles like there seems to be times when people are very young with like wealth and like making movies about famous people and like rich people and all that, which coincide more when the nodes make kind of like more harmonious aspects to Jupiter, and then there seems to be times when the movies kind of become extremely self-aware. Your generation, like the millennial Jupiter in Leo time, was also the generation that saw a lot of specifically it was like, if I'm not wrong, the 1990, 1991, right? Or something like that.
Yes.
So that's when there was in the movies specifically a lot of the indie movies boom, and a lot of like even depressive or like really gnarly look at film. And in like in fashion, people were dressing up, even the famous people were dressing up as poor people. That's this kind of like trend of like escaping a little bit from like that um, Hollywood culture. And similarly, and this is very interesting because those two go very, very hand in hand. Rock and roll also has a lot to do with Jupiter and Leo. All of the Rolling Stones have Jupiter in Leo, Natalie. Elvis Presley has Jupiter in Leo as well. Jim Morrison has Jupiter in Leo. There's like a bunch, there's so many that I can't even like name how many. And a lot of their most important releases, in the case of Elvis, his most selling album was a Jupiter Return, a second Jupiter Return. But also the next one, the one right before he kind of disappeared and then died, was the last one that kind of like was big, was also a Jupiter in Leo return. So there's a lot of like similarities between like rock and roll culture and the figure of the rock and roll, which is kind of what made me go into this kind of like wormhole of Dionysius as a god, representing a lot of Jupiter in Leo, because Jupiter is like the jovial attitude, is very like it has a lot of like temperate and like great qualities of like giving to everyone and being very generous, but it also has that like when you think about Jupiter, about Zeus, it has a very like I take it because I want it energy that is kind of be also very very rock and roll, very like I'm just taking the mic and being just like kind of this very unhealthy masculinity, but that we still kind of buy onto because it's like, oh, these people look really nice doing it. They look really nice being like so men. Um, and interestingly enough, or like to kind of like put a point here, just in case this brings something else to anyone else, a figure that I kept thinking and going back onto in my Jupiter in Leo research was Guy Debord, who wrote The Society of a Spectacle, and did a lot about like the relationships between how we are shown things. So like we are shown like a vision of what we could be, for example, and we are made within this phase of capitalism to believe that seeing a thing is just being the thing. You don't have to actually do anything. You can just be watching other people's lives. And that to me feels very, very, very on the shadow of Jupiter in Leo. So I wonder if like now that the South Node is gonna be there and it's gonna oppose Pluto, we're gonna kind of like see, because we know that Pluto does that. Pluto like kind of reveals the shadows of the things that touch it. We're gonna see kind of like that shadow aspect and the revealing of like how we are supposed to live like live each one their life and not like live vicariously through like famous people's lives, which is kind of like something that this very very huge capitalistic system has created as a way of keeping us entertained.
Yeah, we need to bring back art. Art is inherently political. I love what you said. That makes so much sense. Yeah, I feel like people are going to be more self-reflective through their art and then also um, more cultural commentary on what's happening in our society. And I think that we're desperately going to need that. We're going to need creators who have the nerve and the bravery to speak out on what's really going on. So yeah, art is being a therapeutic release. Yeah, I can see that happening during this era. Anybody else have any kind of thoughts about what they kind of foresee, like just humans in general? Like, I don't know. What's going to be good about it? Like, yeah, how we can use this to our benefit. Yeah.
Well, I don't have anything good to say. It was some
Keep it real. Keep it real. We love
yeah.
that.
So I noticed that so back in August 2014 is when WHO had declared Ebola a public health emergency. And that is when Jupiter in Leo was squaring Mars in Scorpio. And at the same time, Saturn was in Scorpio as well. So both the malefics were in Scorpio and Jupiter was squaring them. And we had like the Ebola outbreak was already going on. And this year, in mid-November 2026, so yeah, mid-November, Jupiter is going to conjoin Mars. And this is when the South Node conjunction is going to exact. And at the same time, Jupiter is going to square the Sun in Scorpio and also sextile Venus retrograde in Libra. So it's like a lot going on. And like that square, it's very interesting because, it's in Scorpio and it's the sun, like our vitality and all that stuff. But I don't think it's like I don't see it like a disease. I feel like it's gonna be more like, like with the global conflict that's happening, it's like maybe gonna be related to that. Or because Venus is involved, like Venus is in Libra, maybe
Yes,
that's when a certain leader
I have.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we're all hoping for that here, I
Yeah.
assume.
Well, I mean, the eclipse. I call the eclipse before that. I
Oh,
call the
true.
eclipse. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
gotta say the eclipse.
I
The
get
eclipse,
it.
it's a solar eclipse.
I,
The solar
yeah.
eclipse is when,
Yeah.
it's not about the people, it's about the leader. Do you know what I
Mm,
mean? And then that
yeah.
stuff, like, definitely, I
Mm.
think will be coming in. We got to remember too, if you go back in time, the French feudalism was abolished during Jupiter and Leo. The Declaration of the
Yes,
Rights of Man, Jupiter and Leo.
yes.
The
That's what I want
Bastille
to
came
ask.
down, Jupiter and Leo. California gold rush was Jupiter and Leo. So you just wait with the money stuff. You just wait. They're going to come out with something and it's going to be a whole big freaking rush, and then the Civil War opens. And, we have to remember too that we had the Gulf War. When we talk about cinema, the Gulf War, which was, you called it, Duna, 1990 to 1991, that was the first televised war that we ever had. Okay, so here we are using cinema, what, to like create our emotions, our different things. And, if you want to do positive, I think you have to look in your individual life because where Jupiter is going, no matter what any of us are saying right now, it is going to bring something really beneficent to that area, especially coming off its conjunction recently with Venus and Cancer. So link the two houses together because something got poured in there that then you're going to be able to radiate out. And I think you can use the South Node to have the courage to let it dump out. In Hellenistic astrology, the South Node, Demetra George says, is a place of talents, God-given talents that we were born with, and we don't even realize that we have them. So now's the time where we find our passions, all that Aries stuff. We find what we love and gets us up out of bed without needing to monetize it, and find out the way that you can radiate within that. And it's probably linked to your Cancer and your Leo houses in some kind of way. I would predict. Yakety yak,
Absolutely.
don't talk
Well
back.
said.
I want to
What are you
add
gonna say?
something. I want to add something real quick because I do have something positive to say that is not only personal. That is that conjunction between Mars and Jupiter and the South Node in it's very, very close to the degree that Jupiter and Venus when conjoined I'm also very, I'm not remember what the notes were there, so I'll take a look at that later.
Mhm.
But Venus and Jupiter will conjoin right in the same degree that Mars and Jupiter are gonna conjoin when I don't remember the exact name, but the great union that was in America that was making like the moves, the International Workers Union, decided that they were going to fight for the 8 hours work week. And that declaration was signed with Venus, Jupiter in that end of Leo, in a Mars bound, a Mars, it was Martian in some way. And that declaration made it so that they decided that in May Day of the next 2 years, from 2 years now, in May Day, we will make sure that that people can work 8 hours a day during the week. And that was kind of like something that I feel is resonant of things that are going to come up now. And I do feel like this could mean that fight getting reignited again and maybe working for better work conditions in other ways, maybe working to make that eight hour day work week be valuable because it has been kind of like now a lot of people work like 3 jobs, 2 jobs. So like, like I feel like there's a lot of hope there with the South Node because as Katie put it, Dimitra is not the only one who says that. There's some of Islamic astrologers as well considering the South Node, especially when affected planets that are too hot, like Mars, to be kind of like of a benefic quality, to have a quality of bringing something to the table and kind of like creating a temperance in those very harsh planets. As much as the North Node can, you know, get together with the Sun and the Moon and make them totally terrible, maybe the South Node can get together with Mars and Jupiter and create here a synergy so for a real change. So I do have my hopes in that conjunction actually.
Absolutely. I mean, things falling apart is not a bad thing. But, for those of us who've experienced towers in our lives, we understand that, a lot of things need to fall apart in order to build something more equitable in its place. So that's, in the time, you think it's a bad thing, but it's actually important and needed. It's so funny you bring that up with that Venus retrograde. I was literally just talking about with an astrologer friend right before we got on here, and she was like, I don't think that people are anticipating this retrograde to be as dicey as it's going to be. And she mentioned that as well. Like that's, that happening at the same time. She was like, I don't think people are paying attention to yeah, what this retrograde is going to be like. Benedicta, did you have something to add? I think yeah.
Um, I actually did like what you mentioned just now about the Venus retrograde. It's also going to be happening at the same time as a Mercury retrograde, too. And it almost feels like kind of like what Katie mentioned earlier about how we're going to get a taste with the Jupiter square Chiron in Taurus. There's going to be people wanting to really figure out where their values lie, what they want to invest in. Also, whenever something moves through Taurus, there is definitely that talk about money. Jupiter in Leo, money, status. And a lot of people are going to be figuring out where they sit and how they sit within their community. Like, am I actually harming my community from what I'm doing? Am I actually contributing towards things that are harming my community? And I feel like AI is definitely going to be a really big thing. It's already been a big thing, but people are really going to be mindful of their usage, potentially of their limits. I also did want to mention that one thing that I feel like it's going to be coming about is bringing sexy back with Jupiter and Leo. Well, also redefining what sexy is, honestly. Um, during the Jupiter in Gemini, Saturn in Pisces squares, those were rough when it came to the Ozempic era. Everyone was on Ozempic, everyone was ageist, people didn't want to look old. It was just like being young, just kind of running away from what your age is or like allowing yourself to naturally evolve. Thankfully, towards the end of last year, October, November, we experienced a couple really beautiful grand water trines between Saturn in Pisces, Jupiter in Cancer, and then I believe it was Venus, Sun, and Mercury in Scorpio at that time. But I do feel like now that we're going to have this trine between Jupiter and Saturn happening in fire signs, people are going to be a little bit more conscious about how they look, but I think it's going to be in a healthier way, especially with all the conversations about what Ozempic is now doing to people. You know, there's a weakening of bone density. There are people that look malnourished. There are people that are having a lot of physical ailments. You know, their stomachs aren't working properly anymore. It's becoming almost counterproductive for the original thing. I mean, it was originally like diet medication, which it kind of feels like, of course, something, well, not diet medication. It was originally for diabetes and then became like for diets. And I feel like that is such a Jupiter Saturn square. If like that's just, it's crazy. But I do think that there are people that are going to be a little bit more conscious about what they're putting into their body, what they're around. They're also going to be conscious of looking great for themselves because, you know, with that Jupiter South Node conjunction, there's definitely going to be a redefining of how things should look like, how things should be. But also, like it was previously mentioned, there's going to be this level of, okay, I don't want to look good for the sake of looking good, or I don't want to appease because of how that appears to other people, or because that'll make me look better. I want to try to do something for myself. And now that we are going to have Jupiter move into another luminary, things aren't going to feel as up and down with the trends, but we're going to really notice how things are going to shift seasonally. And eclipses have really been huge when it came to Jupiter, with Jupiter being in Cancer, being ruled by the moon. Now that Jupiter in Leo is going to be ruled by the sun, we're going to kind of see this natural evolution of how the seasons shift. Some of the trends are going to shift. Some of our beliefs are going to shift. Some of what we think is important, we're going to realize that, okay, maybe there's more to it. And that's why I also want to reiterate what Katie mentioned about the Jupiter Cazimi towards the end of July and how important that's going to be, and how that radiant energy is really going to require us to tap into our sense of bravery and confidence, but also to bring more fun into our lives, to figure out what we want to invest our energies into, to also want to invest in ourselves and other people in ways that are more equitable.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's going to be really interesting with the North Node in Aquarius, I feel like, because it is, instead of, I feel like we're coming off the period of hive mind. People are going to have to be discovering who they are outside of hive mind. And I'm just really excited for people's spicy hot takes outside of whatever the internet thinks about you. that's that's my that's my 2 cents on that. Bring back individuality. Anybody else have any final thoughts on their hopes for this transit?
I do want to add on to that. I'm glad you brought up the health things, because as we've been talking, I was thinking like the nodes moving out of Virgo into Pisces. South node's been in Virgo. Everyone's been abandoning their gut health. And post-COVID, a lot of people, and I mean post in the sense of anyone who has had it, a lot of people have inflammation issues that they don't even know about. And now we have all this fire sign action. We're headed into an El Nino year, like a very hot summer, I anticipate. I'm sure we're going to have a crazy wildfire season. And everyone's going to have inflammation issues. And especially with like Saturn and Aries, everyone else I know with Saturn and Aries is having skin issues, something related to inflammation or redness. But then, you know, it's also the head, right? And so now to have Leo getting highlighted with the South Node and Jupiter there, this like diminishing of power in the head, I expect a lot of neuritis, like a lot of neuroinflammation. And I expect a lot of heat issues, like overheating, especially thinking about Chiron moving into Taurus. I think a lot of the consequences of neglecting gut health or diet or like physical things that you are putting into your body or the environment you are putting yourself in is going to be having those reverberating consequences now as like legitimate ailments that people are suffering if they don't address it. I like that you brought up that apparently bone density is an issue with Ozempic, because what could be more Saturn and Aries than losing bone density? I've started lifting weights to try to compensate for that. I think something like that is good. praxis right now, drinking a lot of green tea or like other anti-inflammatory things, I think will be very, in terms of practical advice for this transit, I would encourage people to really lean into anti-inflammatory and cooling things and yeah, building your bone density again and tend to gut health because Lord knows that matters. The other thing about Taurus, a lot of people I know with Saturn in Taurus have thyroid issues. So I expect Chiron in Taurus and related, I guess, to the South Node leaving Virgo. Like I imagine there's a lot of like hormone imbalance going on now that will need to be addressed. And when not Mercury, when Venus retrogrades in Scorpio, like going back and forth, I mean, that has to do with balancing hormones to some degree as well. I just imagine it will be a very important year for people to tend to some unseen body care.
I love how you mentioned
Yeah.
health and you got deeper because there's definitely going to be more people needing to pay attention to their heart health. That's going to be a big thing. And I feel like with Jupiter in Leo going to form that square to Chiron and then that opposition to Pluto, there's definitely going to be people needing to be more aware of their overall health and vitality because of how that will affect their whole body, how that might cause issues with their nervous system, but also with their nerves in general. And talking about what inflammation can do, there's also going to be other effects. And also because of the fact that Ozempic is such a big thing and there's less insulin, people that are either diabetic or having other ailments and needing insulin, there might be a level of a shortage or not really being able to get the care that they need. So there is definitely going to be an increase of complications with health. And I think that we've already been noticing that with this South Node transit in Virgo. But I do feel like when it comes to all that moving into Leo, I think it's going to maybe be properly highlighted, but kind of like how you said, Ambrosia, it'll be highlighted, but then it's like, oh, we're not really going to do anything about it. But it's like, we're going to talk about it, but then it's like, okay, but like, what are we actually doing about this? Like, we're talking about it, like it's being highlighted, but is anybody actually trying to solve this issue?
I also think I did a whole webinar series on Saturn going into Aries with Joe Jolly Knott, and it's on the energetic markers because I actually have a master's in health sciences as well. That's my first, profession. And, I really linked it too with hypertension. You know what I mean? Because that is the cardiac heart stuff. We also are seeing a lot of septic issues, believe it or not, major septic issues, especially within, because Jupiter rules the liver actually in medical astrology. So we really want to think about what within the blood. That's why lymphatic work is becoming very hyped right now. We also think about that with Jupiter, retention of water that we've been dealing with within Cancer. And so definitely there's that level that I think the gut health and the other things are directly linked to the need to detox our bodies, which is very much linked to Chiron and Aries and Uranus going through, Chiron and Taurus and Uranus going through Taurus, where Uranus going through Taurus really up the ante on we're eating everything fake, right? Red dye everything. We're finally realizing it, right? And Chiron and Taurus is going to really show that wound and no one's going to be able to look away because that's what Chiron does. It's like, here's the wound that never heals. You got to look at it now. And we're going to have to look with that gut thing at what we're really putting into our bodies and where it's actually coming from and how we treat animals, et cetera, et cetera.
I also think it's worth remembering, quite literally, we know for a fact that fertilizer is an incredible shortage now and for God knows how long. And that's in addition to all of the climate change things. So I also do quite literally expect food issues with Chiron going into Taurus. And to some degree, I read the Saturn and Aries like on the surface, absurd drive towards being able to do without is how I would put it. The like skinniness. It's not just that you look thin. What is the value of being thin? It shows that you can go without. And leading up into a literal food shortage and God knows how many other shortages, I think there's some degree of like when an animal just instinctively knows it needs to adjust to the upcoming atmosphere it's going to be having to live through. I think there's some degree of people maybe subconsciously recognizing they do need to prepare themselves for hard times. And if we say you are what you eat in terms of Jupiter and Cancer, a lot of people have found God in food. I've joked this last year, like when everything else goes to shit and you just have an incredible meal and you're like, this is why I'm alive. I think that's been good, but moving into Leo again, like if you are what you eat, what are you eating? And what even do you have access to be able to eat? Like, is it your choice what you are, given what choices you have available in terms of what you are able to consume, media-wise or food-wise?
Absolutely. With bulimia and eating disorders being so huge in the 90s and early 2000s, and then that messaging coming back 20 years later. And people say, psychologically, subconsciously, that's someone saying they want you to be weak. They want you to be weaker so you're
Yeah.
easier to overpower. It really does send this powerful message. It is, yeah, it's very sad that that is where people have backtracked with that trend, unfortunately. But yeah, all of this
Yeah.
is fascinating. What were you going to say? Yeah.
We're
Oh,
just
just,
adding, remember RFK put out a video of him working out in the gym and doing all this stuff? Regrettably, I think that is also Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. It's not just thinness, it's looking like you would be able to fight if you had to.
uh, and also like a lot of conversations increasing around how beauty standards are rooted in pedophilia and like women's bodies, they want them to look younger like children and all that, like because many people like obviously didn't realize it because it's so normalized and it's like the conditioning literally starts when you're so young, but like and it might have seemed like a radical idea to some people that oh, like what are you talking about, but now it's actually people are actually understanding it and they're grasping it. And I think maybe that's also like this shift into fixed signs, where cardinal signs are more like introducing a new idea that seems like radical to some people, or it seems like, okay, like it's uh, initiating this new wave of thinking. But because it's now shifting into fixed signs, it's like people are actually integrating it in their lives. They're like, what's the word? They're actually understanding what it means and like sitting with that internally. So I think that's interesting as well.
No, that's a really good point. Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, we could dive totally deeper into that. The fixed sign of it all. Absolutely. As someone who's fixed and mutable myself. Yeah.
I hate to talk
Anybody
again.
else? Anybody
I
else
just
have closing thoughts? Yes. Who?
just
Oh, yeah.
curious
I
of it.
think the last thing I wanted to mention, because I think we touched on all the other retrogrades except for Mars, and I think that's going to be one of the loudest ones because we'll have Mars go into the sign of Leo in September, and it'll stay there through November. So we'll have those 2 months, like after the eclipses, which is usually, sometimes things don't happen on the day of the eclipse. Sometimes it happens at like the quincunx or the square or the exact trine. So we'll look a little bit later in the fall for the Mars Jupiter activation. And then because Mars will retrograde back into the sign of Leo in February, like we will come and revisit some of these things. And I did like what you had said, Nividya, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, about I'm really concerned with like health, like a global health or like a kind of illness. And I think it's kind of scary talking about these things because we never want to prophesize like fear or instill fear into our audiences. But I think we also have to be responsible and be able to convey information, I guess, like in a timely manner so people can do remediation and like the nice things to sort of soften the harshness. But I do want to mention that this is coming mainly from like traditional Islamic astrologers, mainly from Dr. Olami's almanac, where he had done a year forecast, and he talks about the end of the year having a lot of strain financially, but also something having to do with like an illness. Maybe not at the same extent as like COVID, but some kind of illness that is shared. And of course, like, it's like winter. There's, historically, there's just a lot of like flu and influenza and all kinds of inflammatory diseases going around the time where the temperature drops and gets colder. But also because it is a time where travel, like this year specifically, travel has been really restricted. If you look at the mundane astrology from the Aries the Aries ingress chart, travel is being restricted. So if there's also some kind of thing that is spread because travel is limited or travel is more stressful, like that's just something to point out because during that time it is where people tend to travel a lot, and then people also tend to get sick, and that kind of sickness spreads. So I would point out that as being one of the precautions that we should take collectively. But I think it was Catherine that's no, I think it was Katie that said it, where we have to do what we can to try to figure out what it means individually, because the collective chart is going to be kind of a catch-all for like the most sensationalized stories, but individually it doesn't necessarily have to have to foretell like hardship and distress in everybody's chart. It really depends on where this transit of the Jupiter and the South Node land in your solar return chart and what it activates within your natal chart. And for that, I think it requires a lot more of a sit down procedure instead of a generalized like prediction, like cold prediction.
Absolutely, very well said. I 100% agree with that. Yeah, thank you all for sharing. It's been so great to have everybody here and to share your brilliance and your own personal research. I just really relish opportunities to do this because we get to learn from each other. So I hope to do this again, and connect with you all and see how things transpire. Yeah. And anybody else have a passing thought before we hop off here? Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, really,
Okay,
truly.
yes. I do
Mm-hmm.
wanna add also, because my mind goes back to the different moments that we have repeated of like what Jupiter in Leo has brought up many times. And one of the things that I think is really beautiful is a lot of times it has brought like a lot of really enjoyable and enjoyable art. And I think about like disco music, for example, and kind of like when we're thinking about taking care of each other, I feel like, and about inflammation, I feel like a really good way of also having that in mind and taking care of yourself is dancing, being with people, being in community. That also me feels very Jupiter in Leo remediation. Don't let just like the joy or the fire go only towards like the people who are like making the movies or the spectacles, or also save of some of that joy and the fire for your community and like create something with each other.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the importance of self-expression and
Yes.
being in community. I'm hoping that those two things can come together in a really beautiful way and we get, a lot more out of that. We need that. We need each other now more than ever. I know that we say that a lot, but it's true. Like when things are hard, globally like this, living in unprecedented times, it's gonna make me cry, but we do need each other. And I just like, yeah. Thank you all so much. Truly. I want to do this again. Maybe we can come back and talk about the retrograde in the fall. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, something of the sort. I will see you all online, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day, evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marissa, for your service and everything. Appreciate you.
Yes, I appreciate you. Thank you for all your brilliance. Like, truly, I appreciate it all. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Have a
Bye.
Happy Venus
Bye.
Day.
bye.
Bye.